All right, Colin, this is actually one of my favorite topics. Sometimes influencers come literally in a moment, right time, right place. Sometimes they're a lifetime. When I speak, I always talk about my grandfather, him, my grandmother, my mom, my aunt were from Kiev originally, and they went to Canada,
Oh,
and and we have relatives there and the whole bit. But when I was about five, he used to take me to the park all the time in Montreal. We were walking around, and one day I asked him, I called him, I said, Zeta, how do you know all these people that you talk to? And he said, well, one day, you see that guy over there, I smiled at him and he saw me and smiled at me and came over to me and we started talking about stuff and friends and everything. And then someone else saw us smiling and laughing and came over to us too. And I'm five and I'm thinking, well, this is great. I just have to smile at people and things will happen. And then you get older and you realize, try to make it too complicated, but it's not complicated. It really is just that initial thing. So that's one of my stories. Can you share, and I know there's been many, but can you share two or three
sure,
people that have been influential in your life?
sure. I think I mean the biggest sort of mentor that I would mention is Carol Curer, the founder and director of Rural Action in Southeast Ohio.
Hmm.
And one of the things so 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 I was like an activist. I was pretty intense, pretty self-directed. But she taught me or introduced me to lots of things in terms of the theory around sort of development and sustainability, but also just things of how to make change in the world, right? So, sort of strategic planning and, sort of being organized in certain ways and certain ways of doing things that build social capital, and that sort of, unlock human potential.
Yeah,
Also, I think I learned a lot from her on, just, we'll say spiritual, and just in terms of,
why not? It's part of it.
uh, yeah, yeah, and just sort of owning that, right? Like I was always kind of independent from like the physical world. I was like never that interested in stuff, was never really that interested in status. Like I just had a path that was different. And then she helped sort of put words to it and anchor it in a sort of intellectual and theological sort of traditions and understanding how that process of solving that part of the human condition was very, very important to humans,
Right.
even though, I grew up with engineers and we didn't really, what you see is what you get in the world, right?
Deep down
So
there,
she,
it's there. Deep down with the engineers, it's there also.
yeah, yeah. So so that was very, very influential. You mentioned like things going by, and I'm going to give a total out of left field random thing. I was traveling in Europe when I was 17 years old. I sort of had saved up for the summer and was had a Euro pass and was bumming around. And I sat next to somebody in a train, and he was sort of looking out. We were looking out the window, and he was like, "Oh, that's a blah 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 field. Oh, that's a blah 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 field. Oh, that's a that kind of tree, and that's what this means. And this is this kind of village." And I was like, what? How can you see that from here? And I realized that there are so many levels of what's going on in the world around us that we can understand and we can know and make sense of what's going on around us. And so just the idea that you can unpack reality. And then later when I was in college, there's a woman named Melinda Connor who taught cultural anthropology. Really, really tough professor,
Yeah.
but really opened up my mind to various aspects of the way societies organize and the material kind of conditions that lead to different societies. And I feel like just overall, this idea that there are lenses to understand the world that we're not supplied with naturally. We have to kind of seek them out and learn. That I always found that very, very interesting and
Well,
engaging.
especially the two you just talked about, in the train and her, are totally connected.
Yeah.
If you're talking
Yeah.
about different
So
lenses of looking at things, that's
yeah.
brilliant. Anyone else you want to just recognize that's been an influencer? I know there's many, but any one more?
Well, I think the biggest sort of collective influence on me, I don't know if I'd point to an individual,
Hmm.
but is the is the importance of fundamental ecology of the planet, right? Like that there are systems underlying underlying these biological processes that happen in forests, and you have sort of
Mm.
the fungi decompose things, and it turns into plants, and plants get eaten by this critter, and that critter gets eaten by that critter, and then this tree dies, and then
Yeah.
these things grow. That I feel like to have so societies are very powerful with what they can do to influence the landscape and move resources and stuff like that. We have an incredible power, but we have very, very poor insight into some of the fundamental dynamics of the planet
I
that
think
we
that's
all,
so right on. I mean, mushrooms, the community that mushrooms creates underground for everything, the redwoods that are so huge and their roots don't go down that far, so they grab onto each other's roots to hold themselves up. Just stuff like that
yeah,
blows me away to kind of what you're talking about, the things that happen that are miracles or incredible stuff that
yeah.
you know. So yeah, I hear you.
What one thing I really would like to say, you mentioned this miracles. I hadn't thought about it in a while, but at one point I adopted this habit of when I was going to eat, as a, sort of giving my own sort of thanks for it, and what I'm thankful of is like there's water like 1,000 miles away that goes up into the sky. It gets carried 1,000 miles and it gets dropped on the fields. And then people who I don't know go out and they work the fields and really, really hard work for not very much money. And then they grow the stuff and then somebody brings it and they distribute, So all of the coordinated effort and miracles, both of nature and of human organization that go to bring us sustenance, it's like wow. And if we catch some of those moments and we let that sort of enliven ourselves,
Yeah.
I think that's one way that I see how trying to get through some of the hard times that happen in the world.
Well said. Let Mother Nature do her thing.
Yeah,
Hey, thanks for
no two
sharing all
bats
that.
last. So
Thanks for sharing all that. That's amazing. Really appreciate it.